Chicago, February 14th, 1928, 11:47 p.m. A door closes. Not slammed, not hesitant, just closed. Quiet and final, sealing off a private dining room in the back of a Chicago steakhouse where the air smells like cigar smoke and seared meat. Inside, two men sit across from each other at a table meant for 8. One is Al Capone, the man who owns Chicago in everything but name. Untouchable, ruthless, already a headline before breakfast every morning. The other shouldn't be here at all, a dark-skinned strategist from Harlem, sent as an emissary to negotiate something that, by every rule of the underworld, shouldn't be negotiable. A match strikes, a glass is poured, and for the next 43 minutes, these two men will discuss a deal that some accounts suggest could represent tens of millions of dollars over time. A pact so quiet, so unofficial, that acknowledging it publicly would cost both of them everything. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. It wasn't a shakedown. It wasn't a protection arrangement. It was business. A handshake. To understand what happened in that room, you need to understand who Bumpy Johnson was in 1928. Harlem, 1928. The neighborhood is an empire inside an empire. Jazz clubs packed shoulder to shoulder, rent parties spilling into stairwells, churches on every block, and underneath it all, the numbers game. The numbers racket is simple. People bet pennies, nickels, dimes on a 3-digit number drawn daily from the stock exchange or racetrack results. The payout odds are 600 to 1. The actual odds, 1,000 to 1. That margin is pure profit, and in Harlem alone, underworld estimates suggest the numbers bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. It's not just gambling. It's the neighborhood's economy. Rent gets paid, groceries get bought, club workers get tipped. Landlords stay patient. The numbers keep Harlem running when the rest of the city pretends it doesn't exist. And by 1928, Bumpy Johnson is one of the strategists managing that flow. Not the loudest name, not the most visible, but one of the sharpest. He doesn't carry a reputation for violence. He carries a reputation for solving problems. When something breaks, Bumpy finds the crack before it spreads. When someone talks too much, Bumpy finds the silence before it becomes noise. He's in his early 30s. Tailored suit, fedora. Calm, intimidating presence. He listens more than he speaks. And when he speaks, people remember the line. But in early 1928, Harlem's numbers empire faces a problem that can't be solved with silence. Outside bosses are moving in, not local, not Harlem. White syndicates from downtown Manhattan and Brooklyn, watching the money flow uptown and deciding they want a piece, or all of it. It starts with pressure on collectors, then threats to runners, then quiet meetings with Harlem's bankers, offering protection that sounds more like extortion. The message is clear. Either share the profits or lose the game entirely. And here's the problem. If Harlem resists openly, it becomes a war. If it becomes a war, it becomes headlines. If it becomes headlines, it becomes federal attention. And if the feds come in, everyone loses. Harlem, downtown, Chicago, everywhere. So the pressure builds quietly, like water behind a dam. February 1928. The New York Amsterdam News runs a small story on page 4. Policy game under scrutiny. City officials pledge crackdown. It's 3 paragraphs, no names, no specifics. But everyone in the underworld reads between the lines. The feds are watching. The city is watching. The pressure is rising. Some accounts suggest this is coordinated, a manufactured crisis designed to soften Harlem's defenses before the real move comes. Others say it's just bad timing, the kind of heat that comes and goes in waves. Either way, the result is the same. Harlem's leadership realizes they're running out of room to maneuver. They need a plan that doesn't involve bloodshed, doesn't invite more attention, and doesn't collapse the entire structure. They need leverage from somewhere nobody expects. And that's where the story turns. By mid-February, whispers start circulating in Harlem's back rooms. A sit-down is being arranged, not in New York, not with the local bosses, with Chicago, a diner on Lenox Avenue, 1:30 in the morning. 3 men sit in a booth near the back. Coffee cups, no food. One of them is a community figure, a club owner who's been watching the neighborhood tighten like a fist. "They're squeezing the runners," he says quietly. "My people are scared to collect. If this keeps up, the whole block shuts down." Another man nods. He's been managing a piece of the uptown operation for years, steady and reliable. "It's not just fear," he says. "It's math. Every week we lose ground, we lose money, and the money we lose goes somewhere else." The third man, Bumpy, doesn't speak yet. He's listening, watching the steam rise from his coffee. The club owner leans in. "So what's the plan? We fight back? We fold? What are we doing?" Bumpy finally looks up. "We're thinking longer. Longer how? Longer than next week, longer than next month, longer than the people pushing us think we can." Silence. "And how do we do that?" the club owner asks. Bumpy sets his cup down. "We make a deal they won't see coming. Let's talk about the $50 million. That number, shocking, impossible, unverifiable, comes from underworld law, not ledgers. Here's what we know. Harlem's Numbers racket, at its peak in the late 1920s, reportedly generated between $20 million and $30 million annually across all operators. If a Pact secured even a fraction of that flow, say 10 to 15% annually, and held stable over a decade, the cumulative total could theoretically approach $50 million. But the real value wasn't just cash. It was structure. It was the ability to operate without interference, to manage territory without war, to plan years ahead instead of weeks. Some historians dispute whether this pact ever existed in writing. Others say it existed precisely because it was never written. Deniable, invisible, impossible to prosecute. The $50 million isn't a receipt. It's a representation of what stability is worth when instability costs everything. That's where the story turns. By late February 1928, the plan is set. Bumpy Johnson will travel to Chicago as an emissary, not as a supplicant, not as a subordinate, but as a representative of Harlem's interests. The goal: propose a division of territory and profits that keeps the money flowing, keeps the heat down, and keeps everyone alive. But inside Harlem's leadership, not everyone agrees. A smoky back room. 3 men and Bumpy. One of them, a trusted figure who's been in the game longer than anyone, shakes his head slowly. "You're walking into a trap." Bumpy doesn't react. "You think Capone's going to sit down with you like you're equals? You think he's going to negotiate?" "I think he's going to listen," Bumpy says quietly. "And if he doesn't, then we're no worse off than we are now." The older man leans forward. "You walk into that room, and you don't walk out. That's the reality. Capone doesn't share. He takes." Bumpy meets his eyes. "Then I'll make sure there's something worth taking." Silence. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut, but Bumpy's already made the decision. The train pulls into Union Station just after dawn. Bumpy steps onto the platform wearing a dark wool coat, fedora pulled low. Chicago is colder than New York. Sharper, meaner, like the city itself is testing you. He's met by a driver. No conversation. Just a nod in a car. They drive south through neighborhoods that look like war zones, broken windows, empty lots, bullet holes in brick. This is Capone's Chicago. Every block is claimed, every corner is watched, every business pays tribute or closes. And somewhere in the center of it all is the man who built this empire on beer, bullets, and the kind of ruthlessness that makes headlines. But here's what the headlines never explained. Capone is smart, not just brutal. Strategic. He knows bootlegging won't last forever. Prohibition will end, The feds will keep pushing, and the next big score will come from somewhere else. He's looking for that next move, and Bumpy Johnson is about to offer it to him. Let's rewind. Chicago, January 1928. A private office above a speakeasy on the South Side. Al Capone sits behind a heavy oak desk, cigar in hand, reviewing reports from his lieutenants. The money's good, the territory's secure, the competition is quiet, for now. But there's a problem. Federal pressure is increasing. Rival syndicates are testing borders, and the booze game, profitable as it is, comes with heat that never goes away. One of his advisors, a calm, businesslike figure who handles the numbers and logistics, leans against the wall. "We need stable income," he says. "Something that doesn't depend on smuggling routes or rival firefights." Capone nods slowly. "What are you thinking?" "Harlem." Capone looks up. The numbers racket. It's consistent, decentralized, low profile, no warehouses to raid, no trucks to intercept, just paper and percentages. "And they're going to just hand it over?" Capone asks, half amused. "No. But they're under pressure. Downtown bosses are moving in. If we position ourselves right, we could broker something." Capone taps ash from his cigar. "What kind of something?" "A deal. Territory division. Profit sharing. Protection in exchange for stability. And why would Harlem trust us?" The advisor smiles slightly. "Because we're not trying to take it all. We're offering structure." Silence. Capone leans back in his chair. "Set up the meeting. Every deal starts with leverage, and leverage starts with weakness. In Harlem's case, the weakness is visibility. The numbers game operates in plain sight. Runners on street corners, collectors in barber shops, bankers in backroom offices. It's community-based, which makes it resilient, but it also makes it vulnerable. If outside pressure gets loud enough, if the feds decide to make examples, if the wrong people get arrested and start talking, the entire structure collapses. Chicago, by contrast, has infrastructure. Capone controls judges, cops, aldermen. He has legal fronts, political connections, and enough firepower to make enforcement think twice. He doesn't need Harlem's money, but he needs Harlem's model. A system that survives beyond prohibition, beyond headlines, beyond heat. Some accounts suggest Capone saw the numbers racket as the future of organized crime, decentralized, community-embedded, impossible to shut down completely. And if he could secure a piece of that future, quietly, without a war, it would be worth more than any liquor shipment. And that's where the story turns. Back in Harlem, the pressure is building. A stairwell in a tenement building. Late evening. A numbers runner, young, nervous, climbs the stairs with an envelope of cash in his coat pocket. He's 3 floors from the top when a man steps out from the landing above. Not Harlem, not local. Suit too clean, shoes too polished. "You got something for me?" the man asks. The runner freezes. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "Sure you do. You're carrying money that doesn't belong to you. I'm here to make sure it gets where it needs to go. I'm just doing my job, then do it smarter. Next time, half of that envelope comes to me." Not a discussion. The runner's hand tightens around the railing. "And if I don't?" The man steps closer. "Then you stop working. Permanently." Footsteps echo from below. The man turns and walks back up the stairs, disappearing into shadow. The runner stands there, shaking, the envelope burning a hole in his pocket. This is the 3rd time this month. And it's happening all over Harlem. A payphone on the corner of 125th Street, just after midnight. A collector makes a call, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. "It's getting worse," he says quietly. They're not asking anymore. They're taking. On the other end of the line, a voice responds. Steady. Calm. "How many incidents?" 6 this week. maybe more. People are scared to report. And the money? We're losing 10, maybe 15%. If it keeps going, we're going to lose runners entirely. Silence on the line. Then, stay low. Don't push back. Not yet. How long? Not long. The line goes dead. Chicago, early February. A different backroom. A different meeting. This time it's Capone's inner circle. 3 men who handle enforcement, logistics, and political connections. They're discussing the Harlem proposal. One of them, a broad-shouldered enforcer, shakes his head. This is a mistake. We let them in. We look weak. The logistics man disagrees. We're not letting them in. We're structuring cooperation. There's a difference. What's the difference? The enforcer asks. They get our protection. We get a cut. That's the same deal we make with every 2-bit operation in this city. No, the logistics man says. This is long-term. This is infrastructure. This is what happens when the booze money dries up. The third man, Capone's political fixer, speaks up. And what if they're setting us up? What if this is a play to get us on record, get us exposed? Capone, sitting at the head of the table, finally speaks. That's why we meet in person. That's why it stays off paper. That's why it's deniable. He looks around the room. We're not signing anything. We're agreeing to something, and if it works, it's worth more than anything we're running now. The enforcer leans back, unconvinced but silent. Set it up, Capone says. Private room. No witnesses. Just him and me. And that's where the story turns. Let's talk about fear. Not the loud kind. Not gunshots or headlines. The quiet kind. The kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, running the numbers in your head. Harlem, late February, 1928. A small apartment above a barber shop. A man sits at a kitchen table, a ledger open in front of him, a pencil in his hand. He's been managing a section of the numbers operation for 5 years, reliable, trusted, invisible. But the pressure is eating him alive. The outside bosses have approached him twice now. The first time, they offered money. The second time, they offered a choice: cooperate or lose everything. And now he's staring at that ledger, knowing that every name in it, every street corner, every collector, could be leverage against him. His hands are shaking. A knock at the door. He freezes. Another knock, harder this time. He stands slowly, walks to the door, opens it a crack. It's one of Bumpy's people, a younger man, sharp-eyed, patient. We need to talk. About what? About whether you're still with us. The man at the table doesn't answer right away. I'm with you, he says finally. I've always been with you. Then why are you meeting with people you shouldn't be meeting with? Silence. I don't know what you're talking about. The younger man steps closer. You were seen, twice. Once in a diner on Amsterdam. Once in a car on 145th. Both times with men who don't belong here. The man's face goes pale. They threatened me. They said if I didn't talk to them, they'd come for my family. And what did you tell them? Nothing. I swear, I didn't give them anything. The younger man studies him for a long moment. Then keep it that way. Because the next time you're seen with them, it's not a conversation. He turns and walks away, leaving the man standing in the doorway, heart pounding. This is the suspicion mini-arc. It runs parallel to everything else. Quiet, persistent, tightening like a noose. Inside Harlem, trust is currency. And when trust starts to crack, everything else follows. Another scene, a diner booth. Early morning. The same younger man sits across from Bumpy. Coffee between them. He's scared, the younger man says. But I don't think he's flipped. Not yet. Not yet, Bumpy repeats. But he's close. What do you want me to do? Watch him, but don't push him. If he breaks, I need to know before he does something stupid. The younger man nods. And if he does break, Bumpy doesn't answer right away. Then we deal with it quietly. Meanwhile, the community mini-arc is unfolding. A jazz club on Lenox Avenue. Friday night, the room is packed, music loud, drinks flowing, laughter cutting through the smoke. But behind the bar, the owner is tense. She's been in this business long enough to read the room, and tonight, the room feels wrong. Too many unfamiliar faces. Too many men in suits who don't dance, don't drink, just watch. One of her regulars, a numbers runner she's known for years, leans against the bar. They're here, he says quietly. I know. What are we supposed to do? Nothing. We do our jobs. We stay calm. And we wait. Wait for what? She wipes down the bar, not looking at him. Wait for someone to make a move. The runner nods, but his hands are shaking. This is what the pressure looks like on the ground. Not violence, not chaos. Just fear, spreading like a stain. And here's the thing nobody talks about. The numbers game isn't just money, it's trust. People bet their pennies and dimes because they believe the game is fair, because they know the runners, because the community holds it together. If that trust breaks, the game collapses. And if the game collapses, Harlem loses more than money. It loses the one thing that keeps the neighborhood running when everything else shuts down. That's the real stakes. Not dollars, not territory. Community. Chicago. February 13th, 1928. Bumpy Johnson sits in a hotel room on the south side, looking out at the frozen city below. Tomorrow night, he'll meet Al Capone. Tomorrow night, he'll walk into a room where one wrong word could end everything. But here's what he knows. The pressure in Harlem isn't going away. The outside bosses aren't going to stop. And if something doesn't change, Harlem will burn, not in fire, but in slow collapse, block by block, until there's nothing left to defend. So he's going to offer Capone something nobody else can. Not money, not territory, a future. A knock at the door. Bumpy turns. A message slipped under the door. He picks it up, unfolds it. 3 words, tomorrow, 11 p.m. He folds the note, strikes a match, and watches it burn. But Bumpy already had the first receipt. Let's rewind one more time. Because while Bumpy Johnson is preparing to walk into the most dangerous negotiation of his life, something else is happening. Something quiet. Something that started weeks before anyone knew there would be a meeting. Harlem, January 1928. A rooftop in the early morning cold. Bumpy stands with another man, older, gray-haired, wearing a wool coat and wire-rimmed glasses. This man doesn't run numbers, doesn't manage territory, doesn't carry a gun. He manages information. Tell me what you're hearing, Bumpy says. The older man pulls out a small notebook, flips through pages covered in tight handwriting. The downtown bosses are coordinated. 3 separate crews, but they're moving together. Someone's organizing them. Who? That's the question. But here's what we know. They're watching the same corners, pressuring the same runners, and they're not fighting each other for territory. Bumpy nods slowly, which means someone told them where to push. Exactly. An insider. The older man closes the notebook. That's my guess. Someone feeding them routes, schedules, weak points. Bumpy stares out over the rooftops, thinking. Find out who. Quietly. And if I do, don't touch them. Just watch. I need to know what they know before we move. This is the first intel beat, and it's the beginning of Bumpy's real plan. Here's what most people don't understand about power. It's not about who's loudest. It's about who knows first. By late January, Bumpy's information network is running full speed, quiet, invisible, relentless. A porter at Grand Central Station notices which trains certain men are taking. A laundromat worker overhears a conversation between 2 men in expensive suits. A cab driver remembers a fare to a specific address in Brooklyn. None of it means anything alone. But together, It's a map. A map of who's moving where, who's meeting whom, and most importantly, who's paying for it. Because here's the thing about pressure campaigns. They cost money. Muscle costs money. Bribes cost money. Coordination costs money, and money leaves a trail. Bumpy doesn't need to catch anyone red-handed. He just needs to follow the paper. A receipt from a diner on the Lower East Side. A ledger entry from a Brooklyn Numbers bank. A name mentioned twice in 2 different boroughs. Small pieces, fragments, but Bumpy's good at puzzles. And by early February, he has enough pieces to see the picture. The outside bosses aren't just pushing into Harlem, they're being funded to push into Harlem. Someone bigger is backing them, using them as proxies, testing Harlem's defenses without exposing themselves. And that someone is connected to Chicago, not Capone directly, but someone in his orbit. Records are unclear on whether Bumpy knew this before the meeting was arranged, or whether he figured it out after. But either way, it changes everything. Because if the pressure is coming from Chicago's periphery, then Capone might not even know about it. Which means Bumpy isn't walking into a trap. He's walking into an opportunity. And that's where the story turns. Second Intel Beat, a barber shop on 135th Street. Mid-morning. A man sits in the chair getting a shave, eyes closed, towel over his face. The barber works slowly, carefully, while Bumpy stands near the window watching the street. The man in the chair speaks quietly. I talked to the bookkeeper on Amsterdam. He says 3 separate payments came through in the last month. Same amount, same day of the week, different sources. How much? Bumpy asks, not turning around. 500 each, 1,500 total. And the sources? Shell accounts, but they all trace back to the same bank in Brooklyn. Bumpy nods slowly. Who uses that bank? Italians, mostly Brooklyn crews. But one name keeps coming up. Which name? The barber finishes, wipes the man's face clean. The man sits up, looks at Bumpy. Torrio. Silence. Johnny Torrio, Capone's mentor, the man who built the Chicago operation before handing it over. He's supposedly retired now, living quiet in Brooklyn, out of the game. But if his name is on these accounts, he's not out, he's just invisible. Interesting, Bumpy says quietly. Third Intel Beat, a basement office in a Harlem tenement. Late night. 3 women sit at a long table covered in papers. Receipts, ledgers, betting slips, expense reports. These are the accountants, the invisible backbone of the entire operation. They don't carry guns, they don't make threats, they just track every dollar that moves through Harlem's numbers game. And right now, they're tracking something else. One of them, sharp-eyed, meticulous, holds up 2 pieces of paper. Look at this, she says. Bumpy leans over the table. This is our weekly take from the West Side, and this is the reported take from the same area 2 months ago. She points to the numbers. We're down 18%, but the bets aren't down. People are still playing. So where's the money going? Bumpy asks. That's the question. Another woman speaks up. Someone's skimming, either at the collection level or at the handoff. Or both, the first woman says. Bumpy straightens up. Find out where, and find out who. Fourth Intel Beat. A phone call, public booth. 2 a.m. Bumpy listens, doesn't speak much. On the other end, a voice reports, the pressure crew has a schedule. They hit the same blocks every Tuesday and Friday. Same time, same route, which means they're not improvising, Bumpy says. No, someone's giving them a map. Any idea who? Not yet, but I'm close. Stay on it. Bumpy hangs up, steps out of the booth, walks into the cold night. The pieces are coming together, but they're not complete yet. Fifth Intel Beat. A diner. Early morning. Coffee and eggs. Bumpy sits across from the younger man who's been watching the suspected insider. He met with them again, the younger man says. Last night. Same car. Same corner. How long? 10 minutes. Then they drove off. And him? He went home. Didn't talk to anyone. Looked scared. Bumpy takes a sip of coffee. He's being squeezed. They're using him, but they don't trust him yet. You think he's giving them real information? I think he's giving them something. Whether it's real or not, I don't know. The younger man leans forward. We should pull him in. Make him talk. Bumpy shakes his head. Not yet. As long as he's scared, he's predictable. The moment we confront him, he either runs or flips completely. Right now, he's useful. Useful how? Bumpy sets his cup down. Because he's the leak. And if we control the leak, we control what they know. 6th Intel Beat. A meeting room above a pool hall. Midnight. Bumpy sits with 5 people. Collectors, runners, someone from the laundry, someone from the cab company, someone from the train station. These are the eyes. Here's what we know, Bumpy says. The outside pressure is organized. It's funded. And it's connected to Brooklyn, maybe Chicago. He spreads a hand-drawn map on the table. They're hitting these corners, these times, these runners. He taps the map, which means they know our routes, they know our schedules, and they know who's carrying. One of the collectors speaks up. So what do? We change the routes. Not all of them, just enough to test where the leak is. If they follow the new routes, we know the information is current. If they stick to the old routes, the leak is delayed. Everyone nods. And once we know the timing, Bumpy continues, we know how to feed them. Feed them what? Someone asks. Bumpy smiles slightly. Whatever we want them to believe. This is the counterplay current. While Harlem is under pressure, Bumpy is building a map of the entire operation. Who's pushing, who's funding, who's leaking, who's watching. He's not reacting, he's preparing. And by the time he boards that train to Chicago, he already knows more than anyone expects. Now we move into the preparation beats. First preparation beat, the routes. Over the next week, Bumpy quietly shifts 3 collection routes, different corners, different times, same runners. He doesn't announce it, doesn't explain it, just changes the map. And then he waits. 2 days later, the pressure crew hits the old corners. Not the new ones, which means the leak is at least 48 hours delayed, which means whoever's feeding information doesn't have real-time access. Good, Bumpy says when he hears the report. That's what I needed to know. Second preparation beat, the insider. Bumpy doesn't confront the suspected man. Instead, he feeds him specific, false information through casual conversation. A mention of a new banking location. A comment about a schedule change that isn't real. A rumor about a big payout on a corner that doesn't exist. Small things. And then Bumpy waits to see if those small things show up in the pressure crew's movements. They do. Not all of them, but enough. Which confirms it. The man is talking, but he's not deep enough to know what's real and what's bait. Keep him close, Bumpy tells the younger man, and keep feeding him. Third preparation seat. The meeting plan. Chicago is a different game. Different rules. Different players. Bumpy can't walk in with muscle. Can't walk in with threats. He has to walk in with value. So he spends 2 days putting together a proposal, not on paper, just in his head, that outlines a structure both sides can live with. Territory division, percentage splits, protection guarantees, and most importantly, plausible deniability. If this deal is going to work, it has to be invisible. No contracts, no witnesses, no records. Just a handshake and a mutual understanding that breaking it costs more than keeping it. Fourth preparation beat. The backup plan. Because here's the thing. Bumpy might be walking into that room to negotiate, But he's also walking into that room prepared to walk out. He makes sure certain people know where he is. He makes sure certain messages are ready to be sent if he doesn't return. He makes sure that if this goes wrong, Harlem knows who to blame and what to do next. It's not paranoia, it's strategy. If I'm not back in 3 days, he tells the older information man, you know what to do. The man nods. No explanation needed. And now we come to the false resolution. Chicago, February 13th, 1928. 8 p.m. Bumpy is in his hotel room when a message arrives. Not the meeting confirmation, something else. A note, folded twice, slipped under the door. He picks it up, reads it. The meeting is off. Capone changed his mind. Leave Chicago. Bumpy stares at the note for a long moment. Then he strikes a match and burns it. Because he knows what this is. It's a test. Someone wants to see if he panics, if he runs, if he folds. But Bumpy didn't come to Chicago to fold. He came to finish this. So he does exactly what he planned to do. He waits. An hour later, another knock. This time it's the driver. Mr. Capone is ready for you. Bumpy puts on his coat, adjusts his fedora, and walks out the door. The false resolution collapses. The real meeting is on. Here's the thing about power negotiations. They're not about who's stronger. They're about who's willing to lose less. Some accounts suggest Bumpy walked into that room knowing he had leverage. Not because Harlem had more muscle than Chicago, but because Harlem had something Chicago needed. A model, a future, a system that survives. But Chicago had leverage too. They could crush Harlem anytime they wanted. They could fund the outside bosses indefinitely. They could turn the heat up until the neighborhood burned. So the trap isn't physical. It's psychological. Both sides need this deal, but neither side can admit it, and the first one who admits it loses. So the entire negotiation becomes a dance around that admission, finding a way to agree without appearing weak, to compromise without appearing desperate. Historians dispute how long the actual meeting lasted. Some say 20 minutes, others say over an hour, but everyone agrees on one thing. When Bumpy Johnson walked out of that room, the underworld had changed, and that's where the story turns. February 14th, 1928. 11:47 p.m. The back room of a steakhouse on Chicago's South Side. The door closes. Inside, Al Capone sits at one end of a long table, cigar in hand, looking every bit the man who owns a city. At the other end, Bumpy Johnson sits with his hands folded, hat on the table beside him, calm and still. Between them, ashtrays, glasses, a bottle of whiskey neither man has touched. No guards, no witnesses, no one who can say this meeting ever happened. Capone speaks first. I'll be honest. I didn't think you'd show. Why wouldn't I? Bumpy asks. Because you're smart, and smart men don't walk into rooms like this without knowing how they're getting out. Bumpy doesn't smile, but something shifts in his eyes. I know how I'm getting out. Yeah? How's that? The same way I came in. Through the front door. Silence. Capone taps ash from his cigar. You've got guts. I'll give you that. I've got a proposal. I'm listening. Bumpy leans forward slightly. Harlem's under pressure. You know that. Downtown bosses trying to move in, feds watching closer, the whole system tightening. Capone nods. And you think I can help with that? I think we can help each other. Capone raises an eyebrow. How's that work? Bumpy speaks carefully, every word chosen. The numbers game in Harlem brings in steady money, hundreds of thousands weekly. It's decentralized, community-based, hard to shut down, but it's vulnerable to outside pressure because we don't have the infrastructure you have. Infrastructure meaning what? Political cover, legal fronts, enforcement capacity. Capone leans back in his chair. So you want protection. I'm offering partnership. The word hangs in the air. Capone doesn't react immediately. Partnership, he repeats. And what do I get? A percentage, territory cooperation, and a model that survives past prohibition. That last line lands. Because Capone knows, everyone knows, that bootlegging has an expiration date. The laws will change. The feds will adapt. The game will shift. But the numbers? The numbers are forever. Capone studies Bumpy for a long moment. You're asking me to protect Harlem in exchange for a cut of something I could just take. You could try, Bumpy says evenly. But taking it means war. War means attention. Attention means the feds come in and nobody wins. We both lose money. We both lose people. And for what? Capone doesn't answer. Or, Bumpy continues, we structure this quietly. Territory divisions. Percentage agreements. Nobody's pride gets hurt. Nobody's city burns. And we both walk away richer than we are today. A match strikes. Capone lights a fresh cigar, thinking, and how do I know Harlem holds up their end? Same way I know Chicago holds up yours. We both have too much to lose by breaking it. Silence again. Then Capone leans forward. Here's my concern. You walk out of here, you go back to Harlem, and somebody decides they don't like this deal. Then what? I'm left with an agreement that doesn't exist and a reputation for being soft. Then we make sure it exists without existing. How? Bumpy taps the table. Mutual enforcement. You keep the downtown bosses off our backs. We make sure your percentage comes through. We don't need contracts. We don't need witnesses. We just need results. Capone studies him, and if someone tests it, then we both respond. Together. Quietly. Another silence. Capone takes a long drag from his cigar, exhales slowly. What's the split you're proposing? Bumpy doesn't hesitate. 10% off the top. Paid monthly. In exchange for full territorial protection and coordination on shared interests. Shared interests like what? Like keeping the feds looking somewhere else. Like making sure the next big move doesn't blow back on either of us. Capone nods slowly. 10%. Off the top. Yes. And this stays quiet. Completely. Capone stands, walks to the window, looks out at the frozen Chicago night. Bumpy waits. Finally, Capone turns around. You know what the real game is? What's that? Staying alive long enough to spend the money. He walks back to the table. Most guys in this business, they're thinking next week, next month if they're smart. But you're thinking years. I'm thinking survival, Bumpy says. Capone nods. That's why this works. He extends his hand. Bumpy stands, takes it. The handshake lasts 3 seconds. No words, no ceremony, just an understanding. And then Capone speaks the line that becomes legend. Business first. The rest is noise. The room is silent. Bumpy picks up his hat, places it on his head. One more thing, Capone says. Bumpy stops. This deal? It never happened. If anyone asks, anyone, it didn't happen. Agreed. But if it works, Capone continues, if this thing actually holds, we do it again. Bigger. Bumpy nods once. Understood. He turns, walks to the door, opens it. Cold air rushes in. He steps out into the hallway and the door closes behind him. Outside, the city is dark and frozen. Bumpy walks 3 blocks before the car picks him up. He doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. The deal is done. Here's what happened next. Nobody saw the meeting, but everybody felt it. Within a week, the pressure on Harlem's Numbers operation stops. Not gradually, not partially, completely. The outside crews that had been squeezing runners, threatening collectors, skimming percentages, they vanish. No explanation, no confrontation, just gone. And the word spreads fast. A barbershop conversation. You notice the heat's off? Yeah. What happened? I don't know. But somebody made a call. A diner booth. The Brooklyn boys pulled back. All of them. Same day. Somebody got to them, or somebody scared them. A pool hall. I heard it was Chicago. Chicago? Why would Chicago care about Harlem? I don't know, but that's what I heard. The rumors are vague, contradictory, impossible to pin down. But the result is undeniable. Harlem's Numbers operation stabilizes. Money flows again. Runners work without looking over their shoulders. The community exhales. Some accounts suggest that within 2 months, Harlem's weekly take increased by nearly 20%. Not because more people were betting, but because the skimming stopped and the fear lifted. If those numbers held over a year, over 5 years, over a decade, the cumulative total could theoretically reach tens of millions. The $50 million isn't a receipt. It's a projection of what stability is worth. And that's where the story turns. Reaction Scene 1. Harlem, a rooftop meeting. Late February, 3 days after Bumpy's return. 5 men stand in the cold, smoke rising from cigarettes. One of them, the older man who doubted the mission, looks at Bumpy. I was wrong. Bumpy doesn't respond. I thought you were walking into a trap. I thought Capone would eat you alive. He tried, Bumpy says quietly. And I didn't let him. Another man speaks up. So what did you give him? What's the cost? 10%. Monthly. Paid clean. Silence. Someone whistles low. 10% of the entire operation. 10% in exchange for peace, Bumpy says. In exchange for the downtown bosses disappearing. In exchange for running our game without looking over our shoulders every 5 minutes. The older man nods slowly. And you trust him to hold up his end. I trust him to want the money more than he wants the war. That's not the same as trust. No, Bumpy agrees, but it's enough. Reaction Scene 2. Harlem streets a week later. The jazz club on Lenox Avenue is packed again. Music loud, energy high. The fear that had been pressing down on the neighborhood finally lifted. The owner stands behind the bar, pouring drinks, watching her people laugh and dance like they haven't in months. A regular leans against the bar. Feels different in here, he says. It is different, she replies. What changed? She shrugs. Somebody made a deal. Somebody made it stick. You know who? She smiles slightly. Does it matter? The runner thinks about it. I guess not. But privately, everyone knows. The name doesn't get said out loud, but it's there, in every conversation, every quiet toast, every relieved exhale. Bumpy. Reaction Scene 3. Chicago Al Capone's office. Early March. Capone sits behind his desk, reading a report from one of his accountants. The logistics man stands across from him. It's working, the logistics man says. The first payment came through. Right on schedule. 10% exactly as agreed. Capone nods. And the Harlem operation? Stable. No interference from the downtown crews. No heat. No noise. Capone sets the report down. Good. He leans back in his chair. You know what this means? What? It means we just built a model that survives past the booze. It means we just found the next game. The logistics man nods. And Johnson? Capone smiles slightly. Johnson's smarter than half the men I've got working for me. He walked into that room with nothing but a proposal and walked out with a deal. That's rare. You trust him? I trust that he's smart enough to know what happens if he breaks it. The logistics man leaves. Capone sits alone, thinking. Outside pressure had forced Harlem to make a move, and Harlem's move had given Chicago a blueprint. Not for territory, for the future. So what really happened? That's the question historians still argue about. Some say the pact was real, a quiet, unofficial agreement that reshaped the underworld's economics for years. Others say it's myth, a story that grew in the telling until it became legend. Here's what we know for sure. After February 1928, Harlem's Numbers operation stabilized. After February 1928, Chicago's interest in decentralized gambling models increased. After February 1928, Bumpy Johnson's reputation shifted, not as muscle, but as a strategist who could negotiate with the biggest names in the game and walk away standing. And after February 1928, the outside pressure on Harlem disappeared. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timeline suggests otherwise. As for the $50 million figure, it remains unverified. No ledgers, no contracts, no paper trail. But if the pact held, if the percentages flowed, if the stability lasted even 5 years, the cumulative value could plausibly reach that number. Not as a single transaction, as the total worth of peace. And that's the real story. Not the money. The structure. The idea that two men from two different worlds could sit down in a room and decide that cooperation was worth more than conflict. The idea that the biggest power moves aren't loud. They're quiet. They're written in handshakes, not headlines. They're built on mutual interest, not mutual destruction. And they last because both sides know that breaking them costs more than keeping them. Some accounts suggest Bumpy and Capone never spoke again after that night. Others say they communicated through intermediaries for years. Either way, the result was the same. The underworld learned a lesson, and that's where the story turns. February 14th, 1928. A handshake in a back room. No witnesses, no contracts, no proof. Just two men who understood that survival is worth more than pride. And a deal that some say was worth $50 million. Not because of the money, because of what the money represented. Stability, structure, a future. The ability to operate without war, without heat, without collapse. Bumpy Johnson walked into that room knowing he could lose everything. He walked out having built something that lasted. Not through violence, through vision. And that's the lesson. The underworld's biggest moves aren't the ones you see. They're the ones you feel. The quiet shift in pressure, the sudden absence of fear, the realization that the rules just changed and you didn't even notice until it was done. Business first. The rest is noise. So here's the question. Was the pact real? Or is it legend? Did Bumpy Johnson and Al Capone really reshape the underworld in a single night? Or is this just another story that grew bigger with every telling? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you think a handshake can be worth $50 million, hit that subscribe button, because this story isn't over.